All right, guys, so today we're going to talk about working with your team strength program. And so basically what this means is you're in a situation where you have a strength program with your team or with your like either college, high school, or pro team or someone else, right? You have your program with them and you're like, what do I do or how do I supplement this because it's not ideal or it's not everything that I want. So a couple different situations or scenarios. I'll just lay out first. What I found most, I don't know if we'll use this or not, but what I found most with college strength programs, pro strength programs, as well as high school strength programs, is they're usually, we're just going to go like straight practical. They're usually like 3 to 4 days per week. If it's 3 days, usually it's like 2 full, one split or one output or something like that. If it's 4, it's usually like upper, lower, right? And what I found with those specific programs, might be true for your case, might not, but in most cases, they'll cover like a main lift with a decent amount of intensity. So think some type of press, some type of like hinge, some type of squat, maybe some type of pull. They'll cover that with a decent amount of intensity. But then usually most of the other stuff is like, most of the accessory work is such low intensity or such low volume that it doesn't really do much for you. Like let's say you have a 45-minute lift, the main output might be pretty substantial and actually like do something. And then after that, you got like bed bugs, like cross, airplane, RDL reaches for like 3x5 or whatever. So that's just personally what I found with most programs. If that's not the case for you, then this next part won't necessarily apply. But in those cases where it's like you have 1 or 2 things within those where it's like pretty stimulating, but then everything else outside that is not, what I found to be beneficial is basically take and match secondary sessions to those main lifts. So let's say if we break it up, let's say we have day 1. It's gonna work. Yo, what? There we go. Sure. Let's make it red. Let's say we have day 1, we have day 2, 3, and 4, right? Day 1 we're gonna say is upper for your team. Day 2 we're gonna say is lower for your team. Day 3, up. Day 4, low. How I would split this up, if this is the team schedule that you have in the game, let's say like on this upper day, maybe you have a bench and a pull-up and that's good, but all the accessories are kind of like not really nothing. So on this day I would go, in terms of a secondary session, hit something hit the shoulder, hit the elbow, hit the wrist / fingers, right? On the lower day, we're gonna hit the hips, we're gonna hit the knee. When I say knee, that generally means like hamstring, quad, like those areas, right? And it doesn't necessarily mean like leg extensions, leg curls. I mean, it could once in a while, but it means hit those areas. We can get into a little more specific what that looks like. Hips, knee, and then also like ankle / toes. Ankle / toes. And then those would then repeat down here. And then in addition to that, we're probably also gonna want some spine. And maybe that's on like days 5 and 6 in between, right? But the important part here is when we're looking at what I've found most with team training programs is that these, like we said, the accessories aren't hit with enough volume to actually matter. So what you need to take into consideration is, let's say on this upper day, you're doing a heavy bench press in it, or even like a double bench, and it's hit with a lot of intensity or stimulus. We need to hit the shoulder. We want to hit the shoulder, the elbow, the wrist, and the fingers at that same level of intensity. So for example, what that could look like for the shoulder, let's say we're going to do, sometimes I'll put these up on the page, but let's say that we're going to do the hanging dumbbell shoulder ERs where we lay you back into ER with a heavy dumbbell. And then we're also going to do a shoulder IR where you're holding onto a hanging dumbbell and then you go into IR here, right? If we're going heavy and intense with the bench, we also want to go heavy and intense with that. So it's not like 2x5 where you don't feel anything. It's like whatever it means. I don't know, like 4x10, 4x12, or in that specific case, we're going heavy. It's probably going to be more like that, where it's hit with just as much stimulus. You could also do something where, if we're not going as heavy, let's say we're doing like sideline shoulder rotations, we could go like 3 sets of 100, right? But so that's one move that we could, or 2 moves that we could do at the shoulder. We'd also probably want to do something overhead. We probably want to do something back behind, maybe like across and out to the side, right? All like as a whole, we want to hit the shoulder in every direction that it can move as hard as we hit something like the bench. Same thing goes for the elbow, same thing goes for the wrist, fingers, and hands, right? So point being, if we're going to go high output with something, a global move, we want to also hit those smaller areas with similar stimulus. And then same goes here, we want to hit the hips. So example for hips could be like hip impulses in 5 different directions. Like you could go up, you go out to the side, you go across, and you go rotate, or rotation, hit the impulses for those, let's say 3 sets of 75, or 1 set of 3 minutes straight, or 1 set of 90 seconds straight, but hit that with the same level of intensity that we do with the sprint or with the jump or with the heavy lower body lift. And then we'd want to also do that for knee, ankles, and toes. So that's what I found most important in terms of supplementing team lifts is like that type of thing, because what tends to happen is if you go to your school, maybe you're experiencing this, maybe you're not, but if you go to your school and you're doing those heavy lifts and you're doing maybe some sprinting, some jumping, some throwing, but you're not hitting those smaller areas, like the smaller areas are, you know, rolling out with a lax ball or stretching or like 10 minutes of arm care or something like that, right? Where you're not really, literally where you're like just sitting on your phone, you're kind of like da-da-da-da, or like you're like talking to a teammate, just like doing this, right? That's not going to be enough to actually keep those areas strong. And so what tends to happen is the individuals will go and they'll be able to have high output, but they'll basically like, they won't be able to move very well. They'll kind of be built with like a brick, right? This is if their team training is intensive. If their team training is not intense, and this won't be the case at all. They'll just be detrained basically, or you'll just be detrained if your strength training program isn't intense at all, and that's a whole other issue. But if we don't hit these smaller areas, you tend to like turn into that brick, and then you always have like these small naggy issues. Like, why does my shoulder hurt? I train, I lift, I work out, I do my skill stuff. Why does my shoulder hurt? Why does my elbow hurt? Well, we need to put that level of stimulus into those areas that we're not necessarily getting with the team because the accessories are such low stimulus, right? So those are some general recommendations there. And if your team, now if it's a different situation and your team training is not stimulating at all, where like your main lift is, you know, single leg RDL with rotation up to the right with eyes forward, right? Like some of the names that I come up with, but like if stuff like that is your main lift, or it's like a, you know, single arm dumbbell bench with cross crawl holding pattern or something, right? Like if those are your main lifts, that's a whole nother issue. And generally when that's the case, what I've tended to found or what I've seen in those cases is like the lift will be 30 to 45 minutes. It's just not stimulated enough to matter. And so in those cases, then it's basically like we now do a whole session in and of itself, right? So that might be 30, 45 minutes, and it's not really super stimulating. The individual, the athlete will then on their own time do a whole session where they also include these things that we talked about, but then also like the main upper, lower stuff as well. So the sprints, the jumps. And sprints, jumps, usually teams do stuff like that, but it might be like, you know, the heavy lifts as well as all the secondary and accessory stuff that is intense stuff that actually cause some change and challenge survival, right? And that's a kind of a good global question to ask is when you go into your team training, does it actually feel like it's challenging your survival? Do at some points you feel like you're going to die? Not just on like max day for your squat or for your deadlift or for your bench or something like that. Not just on those days, but also when you're doing some of the accessory stuff, when you're doing some of the secondary sessions, when you're doing more of that stuff, are you also put into situations where it literally feels like your ability to survive is being challenged and it feels like you might die at some point during those. I know that sounds extreme, but that's the level that we want to get to actually cause stimulus and change to your system. And if you're not getting there, then that's a good indicator of the how beneficial your team training is and how much it's actually preparing you for your sport, for whatever it is that you're going to do. So those are 2 recommendations. Number 1, if you get some good output with your team, that's how to supplement it. Number 2, if you don't, generally then there's a full session that would be added to that without much issue because the team training just isn't that intense. We went through that. Let's see, I'm just looking at my notes here. Good. So next point then. That covers some general recommendations on that. Next point is what if the team doesn't allow it? So what I mean by that is like, what if you have your team training, you have your team strength training, but they don't allow you to do your own stuff? A little bit of a tough spot, but I mean, there's always a solution, there's always a way out, right? So the 3 main things that I found is number 1, public gym on campus. So this is generally for college athletes, sometimes even high school athletes, but mostly college athletes, where they have their team-specific weight room. Their team strength trainer, whatever, doesn't want them to do things outside of what they're doing. And so in that case, when the athlete wants to do something, sometimes that campus has a different public gym that they can go to that the strength coach won't be at or whatever, that will be fine. If that's not the case, then the second option is obviously like a separate gym membership. And what this really comes down to when your team doesn't allow you to do more than what they have you do, but you know it's not, you know that their training isn't going to prepare you in the way that you need to be or want to be, then it's really just up to you to figure out, okay, what is the actual situation that I can work out to make this work? And it's usually either a different gym on campus or it's a public gym membership that you just have to go on your own time, right? Not necessarily ideal, but we have to do what we have to do. And then number 3 in that case is just get your own things, you know, train in your room, train in your dorm. Like there is some stuff, that kind of depends on, that would work a little bit more of that situation of get your own stuff and train in your room or train in your dorm or train like maybe not necessarily at a gym. That works a little bit better if your strength, if your team training program does have some of the higher output stuff, because then we can do, we can do jug moves, we can do impulses, we can do slow lower things, we can do high rep work. We don't always need a gym for that. So that's a little bit more doable if your team actually has some good high output stuff. Next point, and I want to make this brief and fairly practical. What if team training sucks, right? So basically when that's the case, I essentially communicate like, okay, we have two choices. Number one, either you leave, right? If it's really that bad and you really think it's that detrimental, instead of just sitting there complaining, we're in the middle, either leave or have a conversation about not doing it with the coaching staff there. Obviously different coaching staffs have different levels of willingness to communicate, talk, and accommodate, right? And I'll get into some things to consider when doing that in a bit here, but that's essentially like choice number one is you handle the situation by getting yourself in a position where you don't have to do it, either by leaving, which is, I don't generally recommend, but sometimes it's absolutely necessary, right? It just depends on the situation, but you either leave or you have a conversation and be like, this is why I can't do it, and we'll get into more details on how to do that later. Or option number two, decide that you're going to do it like in full, choose to do that. Like even if your team has you run, let's say your baseball playing team has you run 3 miles, has you run 20 minutes, or has you do burpees and whatever. Like let's say your team has you do that and you're like, this is the dumbest thing ever. If you're going to stay, decide that you're going to stay and do that on purpose as a choice, and then do that, right? But at the same time, make sure that we're also fully getting in what you need to get into, what you need to get on your own and supplementing it, right? Because there's kind of like two aspects of that. Well, number one, first of all, we don't want to just sit in the middle of like, I don't really want to be here, but I'm staying here against my own will or against my own choice. That is going to negatively affect your physiology to where you're literally going to feel worse because you're sitting there doing something that you don't want to do and that you haven't fully made a decision on. You're just like, not my choice, I have to be here. That is never the way to operate. The way to operate is to actually make a decision of either I'm leaving or I'm going to have a conversation with them, or I'm going to stay and I'm going to do this, right? Because then it's like set of, okay, I'm going to stay and I'm going to do this, and yeah, we might have a 10-mile run or a 3-mile run that we have to go do, but I'm deciding to do this, and because of that, your physiology will respond better to that because it's your choice to do that. And then we can also supplement those things that you actually need onto that, right? But if you just sit there in the middle, it's going to be a constant battle, a constant fight, and you're not going to have the same level of energy. Your body's not going to respond the same way. So make a choice either way. Because the last part that I want to get into, if you do need to have conversations with your coaches, just some general thoughts on how to best have that conversation. Number one, do not tell them that it sucks. So basic process of communication is don't make the other person wrong, right? When you make the other person wrong, that then opens up the ability for that person to then like fire back, right? So the first thing to do is not just walk up and say like, hey, this sucks and I want to do my own thing. It's essentially, and I know that you're like, well, it might suck and I do want to do my own thing. Understood. But sometimes we have to approach things with tact and like be able to actually communicate. And consider that if you really want to put yourself in the best position, it's going to be best for you to be able to communicate and to be able to relay your ideas without insulting them, right? Relay your ideas without insulting them, without making them feel like they have to fight back against you. You essentially want to get to the point where you are on the same, not just like you feel like you're on the same, but you're same team, but you're actually on the same team with them and you're not having to oppose them, right? Because you're both trying to do the same thing. Get really well physically prepared, help your team, and do your jobs, right? So that is what we're looking to get across. And so number one, do not tell them that it sucks. Then I have number two, let them know you understand their situation, which is they have X amount of guys. Let's say they have 60 guys that they have to take care of. So it's a lot, and you are trying to take some responsibility for yourself. Not at all trying to not be a part of the team. So that would be another, I mean, each team is different, but like being able to communicate, I'm not just trying to go out on my own, because also understand, I know that sometimes as the athlete or as the person, it's easy. Like when I was a player, this is the way that I thought. It's like, I just need to do everything on my own and I don't need to be with a team, right? Understand from the coach's point of view, like when they're looking at that is somewhat detrimental to the team, because they're like, literally like if you take yourself out of your situation, out of your perspective, out of your viewpoint, and put yourself in the viewpoint of the coach, The coach's role is literally to get a whole group of guys to be able to perform really well and to be able to win whatever it is, win the game, whatever, right? So my point is, there's a way to communicate it where it's not like I'm just trying to do my own thing and I don't care about anybody else. Instead of communicating it that way, communicate in a way where it's like, what I want to do is be able to help us to the best degree that I can. And I'm not trying to not be a part of the team. I'm trying to make sure that I can be at my best so that I can actually give everything that I have and the ability to give to the team. So like, can we find a way, or what is the way in which we can work together so that I'm not like fully just taking away from everything that you do, but I can also do what I know I need to do, right? And that's a part that I had on the last one, is like, or on number 4 that I wrote down, was like, come prepared when you're having a conversation with a coach. Come prepared with what you can do for them, how you can still integrate some of their work, right? So that it's not just like a can't do any of it. This is this hard line that I'm drawing. Instead of doing that, show them that you're attempting to make it work. Show them that you actually want to help them as well. And be like, okay, so I looked at it and this is what you just propose as like, this is my idea of like, these are the things, or like, this is how I think we could best make this work. Like this stuff, like I'm fine with, I'm good with, like, let's do that. Is there anywhere I can cut this out and do this instead? And then explain why, like, this makes my arm feel this way, this makes my body feel this way. I've been like 3 years ago, I stopped doing this stuff and this happened to my body and my arm fell apart, whatever, right? Communicate what actually needs to be communicated there so that they can see that you are attempting to work with them to not just completely like abandon everything that is going on, but to actually work with them so that you both can figure out what the best solution is for all parties involved. And yes, this will take a little bit more thought on your end. This will take a little bit more actual willingness to sit down, figure some stuff out, and not just be like, oh, well, it sucks and I need to go like just do my own thing, right? It's going to take more effort than that. But if you want to actually put yourself in a position where you can do what it is that you need to do, then it's beneficial for you to actually sit down and have this, like sit down and write this out so that you're prepared going into the conversation. Instead of just being like, it doesn't matter like that, right? So I understand that it's not the most fun thing, it's not the most easiest thing, but it will work out better. And consider like, what is it that you actually want for yourself? And if what you want for yourself is to be able to best do what you need to do, then it is on you to communicate to the coach why and how, right? It is your responsibility to communicate that. If you don't, right, then you are taking responsibility for not being able to do what it is that you need to do by saying, oh, I can't communicate to the coach, right? So it's taking the responsibility to be able to get your point across, to be able to come with agreement so that you can do what you need to do in the environment that you're in. Relay the reason you want to add in what you want is not to be different, it is to help and be able to best help the team by performing your best, right? So that we went through. And then last point I put, no matter how immovable they are, do not turn to attacks, continue to search for agreement, right? So basically the point there is get really good at understanding, agreeing, right? And not just turning like, oh, well, you suck and I'm gonna go do my own thing anyways. Maybe it never gets resolved, maybe nothing like that ever happens, but over a long period of time, this is just something that I found, I suppose, but that is true over a long period of time. If you stand true in what it is that you're saying and you don't resort to like personal attacks and you don't resort to, well, you suck and you're not letting me do my thing, like you don't resort to that, but you just kind of like stay on, I'm actually doing this because it's actually best, and I understand that you might not agree with me right now, I understand that we might not have the same viewpoint right now, but like I'm actually intent on doing this because it is best, right? If you stay on that and you don't resort to kind of like that, well, fuck you then kind of thing, right? If you stay on that, that will then allow you to, over a longer period of time, the others will see that and you will be able to gain more respect through that, right? So let's say like at the start of the year, if you have a conversation with a strength coach and there is no give, you're like, okay, got it, completely understand, I'm gonna do the best I can, and you continue to do the best you can, and you continue to get better, and you continue to actually like try your best on what it is that you're doing. Eventually, over a long enough period of time, a month, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, whatever, that strength coach or those others or whoever it is that you have the disagreement with will see that and learn to actually respect what it is that you're doing, versus if you turn and you're just like, nope, don't care, I'm gonna do what I want anyways and it doesn't matter, then there's that ridge that stays there, right? So it kind of takes away that, it doesn't take away the ability to change things over time, but it makes it more difficult, right? But if you never really cross that and you just kind of stay in like, I'm actually doing this, literally doing this because I think this is actually the best for me and actually the best for the team, right? I'm not doing this to make you wrong. I'm not doing this to be in opposition of you. I'm not doing this to try to prove that I'm right and you're wrong. If you don't cross over to that, but you stay in that kind of like, it's actually the best thing to do, over a long period of time, you have a much better chance of changing their mind. And actually putting the whole team in the whole environment in a better situation, including yourself. So that's the biggest reason for that last point, is think longer term, don't break the relationship, continue to be able to like build that, right? Even if it's the hardest thing to do, even if like reactively you just want to be like, nah, I'm just gonna go do my own thing. Just like stick in it, actually do the best thing, right? And over a long period of time, they'll produce good results. Last piece that I put here was like how we do things when we're working with athletes that have team strength training. Is exactly what was laid out there. Essentially, what I laid out is how we'll do it. Where if I have an athlete that has a team strength training program, I'll just get from them what they're doing on a weekly basis, like what days they're lifting, generally what they're doing in those lifts, what they're doing. That really the thing that I care about is what they're doing that is at a high enough level of stimulus to matter. Right, those things, because then I know that those things need to be taken out of our programming. And so then what we'll do is we'll take things out of our programming that they're doing at a high enough level of stimulus to matter, and then we'll essentially like keep everything else in. And then it's like, okay, can you do this in your facility, at your school, or at your team, or do we need to get a different one? Like, what's that look like logistically? And we just work that all out until it's basically the end goal is still that we hit everything that we can hit in the training plan, right? It's just we adjust based off of what the team is doing that's stimulating enough, and then we make any modifications that we need for scheduling, based off of what they're able to get access to in terms of the gym and everything like that. And also, recommending how do you talk to your strength coach, how do you communicate, that type of stuff is important as well. Hope that helps. General recommendations on team strength training, what to do, what to integrate, and then also how to have those conversations.